Hey everyone, welcome back to Portal Wisdom. I'm back today with another story for you. So if you are new to the channel, like and subscribe and click that little post notification bell so you get alerted when I post new videos. And now on to today's topic. Today's topic is going to be a little bit different. So we had a vote on the channel a little while back. Maybe some of you saw it, maybe some of you didn't. But we're getting thinner on some of the treasure stories. I'm still finding some stories and still working on some treasure stories, but I'm mixing in some other stuff. So we had a vote of what kind of stuff you guys wanted to do a little more of. And it was a pretty close vote from more historical figures and interesting stories, and also some of my travels and great pictures. So this is going to be a road trip video, and this is going to cover a lot of cool spots that I've been to, and it's going to include, from a few of the spots, it's going to include quite a few phenomenal pictures that I've taken. And then some of the other spots have some more of my general pictures, because some of those pictures are much older, and anyhow, camera equipment and things just weren't as good 20 years ago when, 15, 20 years ago when I hit a couple of the other spots. A few of these spots I've been multiple times. So this, I guess more or less what I could title this is Native American Road Trip. And this came to mind as I was thinking about, we go to a lot of great off the beaten path places, and a lot of places people don't know about. And I live in Arizona now. I'm not from Arizona originally. I'm from the Midwest. But anyhow, when everybody comes to Arizona, of course they hit the Grand Canyon. And the Grand Canyon's awesome. But there are a lot of other phenomenally awesome spots. Like, Arizona is just loaded with great spots, all kinds of different bucket list type of places. It's amazing. And people just don't understand, probably don't even understand a quarter of what's here. They think Grand Canyon, Saguaros, maybe they know about Flagstaff and Sedona being some cool kind of higher country stuff, but they might know a couple more places, Tombstone, some other stuff like that. And for a lot of people, that's about the extent of it. And that's what they think Arizona's all about. And those are great spots. But the spots we're going to share today would make a great road trip loop. Just a phenomenal trip. And it would be a bucket list trip. And this would take you to places that most people probably don't know about. And you would have some phenomenal pictures and stories that, would be being told for probably many years to come. So, with this being said, I'm going to start out around the Grand Canyon area. So, banking on a lot of people that might be in Arizona would probably be going to the Grand Canyon. And so we'll start there. If someone is done at the Grand Canyon, they've done the South Rim, which is what most people do for the Grand Canyon. So you've done the South Rim. If you have some extra time, if you're on a road trip or have a lot of, quite a few flexible days that you can spend around the area, you can pack a bunch more things in a few days. So if you're leaving the Grand Canyon, you can take the highway that runs north out of Flagstaff all the way up to the Arizona-Utah border to the little town of Page, Arizona. I guess it's not as little as it used to be years ago when we were first going. It's been growing like crazy. But anyhow, Page, Arizona is maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours north of the Grand Canyon of the South Rim as you exit off onto the main highway. I can't remember if that's 89 or what highway that is. Anyhow, so it goes up to Page, Arizona, which sits right by Lake Powell. It sits right on the Arizona-Utah border. Page, for the most part, is on the Arizona side of the border. But before you hit Page, Arizona, before you come into town, coming from the south or coming from Flagstaff or Grand Canyon, you are going to see right off of the highway, there'll be signs all over the place telling you about Horseshoe Bend. And Horseshoe Bend is a really phenomenal site in itself. So, Horseshoe Bend is a bend in the Colorado River where it kind of comes around this big rock that kind of sticks out like a finger, and the Colorado River weaves around it and does nearly a 180-degree turn to go around this big outcropping of rock that sticks out. And of course, I believe this is right around the start of Marble Canyon. So it's a deep canyon here. It's not quite as deep as the Grand Canyon, which is downriver just a little ways, not too terribly far. So the canyon's already getting pretty deep at this point. And you can park, and it's literally right off of the highway. It cost a few bucks to get in now. When I used to start, when we started going, it used to not cost any money at all. But anyhow, so now there's a parking lot, and I think you pay a few bucks a vehicle or something like that to get in. I don't remember the exact cost, but it's relatively cheap for what the view is. So you park and you walk for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, just down a little sandy path that takes you from the parking lot to the viewing area. And when you get to the viewing area, it's pretty cool. It's a really cool sight, looking down into the canyon and seeing the water just weave itself around this formation. And what's really cool too is, it's hard to tell how deep it is. You can tell, yeah, it looks pretty deep, but when you happen to be there and you happen to see a boat down on the river, sometimes that really sets the scale, so you realize how deep the canyon really is. Because sometimes you're there and it's awesome, but it's hard to tell how deep it is. And then when you see a boat down there that you can tell is probably fairly good sized and it looks so tiny, it really helps to set the scale. It's a really amazing sight. And I've been there both times. I've been there at times when there hasn't been any boats and it's still cool. And I think I've got a picture also where there's a boat down there too. So anyhow, that is Horseshoe Bend. That's just a few miles south of Page, Arizona. So if you came out of Horseshoe Bend and you headed north into Page, Page is home to Lake Powell and also to Antelope Canyon. So if it's been a hot day or whatever and you wanted to just buzz right on through Page on the highway, you go right over the Utah border, and within a mile or two of the border, you will hit Lone Rock Beach. And if you don't have a boat, this is the perfect place to go, as you can enjoy the nice sand, and there's a great big pillar sticking out of the water, which is called Lone Rock, and that's where the beach gets its name. But anyhow, this is a great spot, especially in the middle of the summer, to go and enjoy the sand with the kids or whatever, and take a dip, even if it's just for an hour or two. And then obviously if it's summer, you dry off super fast because there's no humidity. So you dry off and then go back into Page and book a tour for Antelope Canyon. So Antelope Canyon is a mesmerizing place. It is just, it's beyond words. It's one of these otherworldly places that's almost beyond your bucket list. And it had been closed down for 3 years or so during the whole COVID mess. And I believe it's open again. And so probably demand is definitely a bit higher. But Antelope Canyon is two canyons, basically. There's Upper and Lower Antelope Canyon. So Upper Antelope Canyon, you can do the little Jeep tours that take you to the mouth of the canyon, and they take you in. It is on the Navajo reservation, so it requires permits and a tour and everything from the Navajo, but it's a lot of tour operations are handled out of right out of Page. So you can book everything there, and they bring you in. They bring you to the mouth of the canyon, and you walk in groups. And it's usually midday, because what's really awesome about Antelope Canyon, so you're walking into these canyons, they're kind of dimly lit, or there's a lot of color in the canyon wall, but they're not since they're slot canyons is basically what they are. So you don't have all the light coming down, but there are some spots where these columns of light come down into the canyon, and it's just like this light beam. It doesn't illuminate the whole canyon. It's just one little beam gets through and penetrates straight down to the floor, or comes down at an angle to the floor or whatever. But it's an amazing sight. And usually the Navajo guides, they have to grab a little bit of fine sand and kind of throw it up in the air to let it get in the air, and that beam just illuminates the dust, and the pictures are just phenomenal. And it's just one of those places, like the ambiance and everything, and just I don't know, everything about being there is just mesmerizing. Now, it is a sacred location for the Navajo people, and you can't go in without permits, and you can't go in without handling everything accordingly. So that is Upper Antelope Canyon. So Upper does have a few beams, and the canyon itself might only be, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of a mile long or so. It's not super long, but it's really cool. So that's the one most people do. But I also mentioned that there is also Lower Antelope Canyon. And Lower Antelope Canyon, I believe, only has one light beam like that comes through at the right time of day. But what's really enticing for people to go into Lower Antelope Canyon are the vibrant colors that just jump off of the walls. It's amazing, with the purples and reds and oranges and yellows and tans, all these desert colors just popping off of these smooth walls that are just as smooth as can be. And there's a lot of steps to get down into Lower Antelope Canyon. So, if you're afraid of heights, maybe it's not the best place for you, because there's a lot of aluminum steps, and there are handrails and everything to get down in there, but they're fairly steep because you're dropping in, I don't know, could easily be a couple 100 feet or more. I don't know exactly. But you're dropping into the canyon quite a bit. And you're down in there deep enough where there is filtered light getting in. And as you're walking through the canyon, and you walk through maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a mile or mile and a half of canyon before you hit the exit stairs. But as you weave through the canyon, the light is coming in different amounts in different places, and it illuminates the colors to different degrees. And man, some of the reds and yellows and oranges are just so vibrant and lively. It's amazing. It's a whole different experience from Upper Antelope Canyon, and they're only a couple of miles apart or so. But technically what happens and what has caused this is these are slot canyons, and when it does rain in the desert, the waters don't soak in. The desert sands and soils tend to be almost repellent of water. So what you have happen in a lot of these places is if it rains, even if it rains halfway steady, you have a lot more runoff than you have the rain soaking into the soil. So when you have a lot of runoff, you get a lot of desert floods and stuff like that. So these canyons can be dangerous if it's going to rain or it started to rain. It's definitely not good to be in these canyons. People have drowned and have died in these canyons before. So just a word of advice to pay attention to the forecast. But anyhow, as long as it's not supposed to rain when you're in the area, Antelope Canyon is like a bucket list item to die for. It's otherworldly. But anyhow, that is what causes these smooth walls too, is the flash floods that have come through, and the sands have just sanded the walls smooth. And there will be times you might be in some of these slot canyons and you'll see some debris 20 feet up. And that debris got there because of flash floods that had 20-foot deep waters raging through there. So anyhow, just a word of advice on that kind of stuff. Anyhow, beyond Page, Arizona, about an hour and a half, 2 hours east of Page, still on the Navajo Reservation, is Monument Valley. And Monument Valley, so Monument Valley is one that I've been to 2 or 3 times, but I haven't been there in quite a while. So my pictures for Monument Valley aren't quite as good a quality as if I had been there recently. And I need to go again. It's been a while, but Monument Valley is a beautiful place. So the sands around the area are kind of an orangish tan color for the most part, and you have these big rock monoliths that just pop out of the ground, just instant mountains. And the two most popular ones or most well-known ones are called the Mittens, because they have like a little finger or a little thumb off to the side of them, and they really do resemble mittened hands. And there's two of them, and then there's a bunch of other rocks that stick up in different ways and everything, and a lot of them are massive. And there's sandy roads that lead around through all these rocks and everything. So it is a really cool spot too, and I think it was very reasonable to get in. So it's a tribal park, probably similar to like a national park, but it's one of their tribal parks, and it is paved getting to the parking lot and the building and everything where you pay, but going beyond that is just sandy roads that weave through all these rock monoliths. And we've been there in 2-wheel drive cars and stuff, and that's just fine as long as it's not raining, or you don't want to end up on these sandy roads if it's raining and you happen to get you might be able to get stuck or something like that too. So just pay attention, of course, to the weather. And anyhow, so Monument Valley is a pretty awesome place too. Beyond Monument Valley, so there is another cool spot that probably few people know about. So if you take the highway north out of Monument Valley, or it heads kind of in a northeasterly direction, where you can go is this little place called Mexican Hat, Utah. That's the name of the town, and it is called Mexican Hat because there is a sombrero-shaped rock that is balanced on another rock that kind of from a distance looks like a person wearing a sombrero. And so the town has been known as Mexican Hat because of this very popular rock. And it's a really cool spot. It's a cool place to stop and take some pictures. But there's another cool spot just a couple of miles from Mexican Hat. So, and Mexican Hat might only be a half hour or something, or maybe not even a half hour north of Monument Valley. So it's pretty close. But this other cool spot there is called the Goosenecks State Park. So coming through Mexican Hat is the San Juan River. And just beyond Mexican Hat, it does some zigzags kind of up and down in the river, and it curves around all these rocks. And there's a vantage point or two in the park that gives you some really cool vantage points looking down into these canyons that the river has kind of carved, and they almost loop back on each other. So it's a pretty cool sight too. So if you have enough time, it's worth a quick little jaunt over to Mexican Hat to check out the Mexican Hat Balanced Rock and to check out the Gooseneck State Park right there. And then as you turn around and you come back toward Monument Valley, there is going to be a spot as you're looking toward Monument Valley. You can basically only see it when you are heading south, and probably a lot of people miss it. But if you've ever seen the movie Forrest Gump, there is a scene where Forrest is running, and he's been running for a long time, and he's in the desert, and he's kind of running downhill, and you see this awesome, just these awesome mountains, kind of desert mountains in the background, and that background is Monument Valley, and you see the highway coming down the hill, and as it comes down toward Monument Valley, it does this 90-degree turn as it's coming up the other hill, and it just looks really cool. Anyhow, that spot is on that highway, as you're heading back toward Monument Valley. You'll see it as you kind of crest a hill and you start to come downhill, and it'll all come into focus for you. And it's a cool spot to pull aside and take a picture. And that's where they filmed that part of Forrest Gump. So anyhow, and I've taken pictures there multiple times. So beyond that, if you head back past Monument Valley, and if you go off in a southeasterly direction from there for like maybe, I think it's about an hour and a half or so, you can get to Canyon de Chelly. It is pronounced Shay, even though it's spelled Chellly. So Canyon de Chelly is also on the Navajo Reservation. Canyon de Chelly is an awesome Native American park too. So what's really cool about Canyon de Chelly is you come in, you're on the rim, so you drive down to Chinle, Arizona, and it's just east of there. So you drive to these vantage points and you're looking down into the canyon. And the canyon has, depending on the time of year, it's got a little stream that runs through there, kind of like a ribbon that winds through the canyon. It's not that deep. But down on the canyon floor, or on the cliffs beside the floor, are what's called White House ruins. And I believe there's some other ruins down there too, some old ancient adobe or cliff dwelling type ruins in the side of the cliff. And it's really cool, especially if you're up on the rim and you're looking at these straight cliffs that just drop way down, and then you can see, the cliff dwelling ruins toward the bottom, and you see the stream that winds through, and the canyon floor is a lot more flat at this point. So it's not like the Grand Canyon where the floor is just the river or anything like that. So, it gives you something different than what you see at like Horseshoe Bend or the Grand Canyon. It's a canyon experience, but it's not quite the same. It gives you a whole different feeling. And the cool thing about Canyon de Chelly is you can do Native American tours. You can go in on foot and be guided on a Native American tour by a Native American, a Navajo person usually. And you can go, there's horseback tours and there's jeep tours that go in and out of the creek and also get to explore the ruins down there and everything. So you can be a lot more interactive at this particular place. So anyhow, Canyon de Chelly is really cool. That's another spot I need to go back to again. It's been a long time since I've been there, and some of my pictures on some of these spots that I haven't been for a while just don't do as much justice to these spots. But as you probably would already have noticed, my Antelope Canyon pictures and stuff like that, I had some phenomenal shots there. So anyhow, there is another cool spot. So if you did Canyon de Chelly and you still have some time, you can head up towards Four Corners and head towards the southwest corner of Colorado. So Four Corners, first of all, is also on the Navajo Reservation, and it is the point where four states meet with a common border. So you have Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah. They all come to a point there. And there is a road that goes in here, and you get to a spot where you can then walk in, and it's got a big circular area, and then it's mapped out right where each state comes to a point. And it's a great spot for pictures where you can put an arm and a leg in each one of the states or whatever you want to do, but get your own cool pictures. But another cool thing about Four Corners is that most of the time, I mean, if you're there during normal popular times, the road in a lot of times does have various booths of Navajo handicrafts and jewelry and all kinds of cool stuff, one-of-a-kind type of souvenir stuff. And a lot of times there can be stands selling Navajo tacos or the Indian fry bread or various other things too that are really good too. So anyhow, so you can hit this place on the way, like I said, to northwest Colorado. The last spot that would be on this ideal road trip would be Mesa Verde. And that is a national park, and it is close to Cortez, Colorado, in the far southwest corner of Colorado. Mesa Verde probably has the biggest amount of cliff dwellings that are very well preserved in the cliff overhang, and they are they're really cool. So they're obviously so cool that it's been turned into a national park, as it's one of the very best examples in the whole country. And there's a lot of different vantage points that you can walk to and take pictures, and then there's trails that go down to the ruins and everything, and you can go on a tour through the ruins and all that stuff, as long as none of that's changed from COVID. We've been there and we've done that, and it's a phenomenally great place to go. And there's other cool ones in Arizona, but Mesa Verde is probably the biggest collection and the most well preserved one. So that would pretty much conclude the road trip. But I'm going to share one other thing with you. So, as I was talking about Antelope Canyon, there will be something I will share here for those of you that have listened to the whole trip. So, one of my really good buddies, Cameron, so we go way back to college, and he's a really good photographer too, and that's one of the things he does for a living, among other things. He's a very seasoned professional. So it's been many years ago, when we were at Antelope Canyon, probably one of the first times that we went there. And we went through the normal upper and lower tours and everything, and just so happened, I think the day we were there, we were in a much smaller group, and we had some younger Navajo guides that were in their 20s. They're, I don't know, young 20s probably. And we were having a good time with them and everything, talking about a lot of different things. And I guess they connected with us or whatever, but they offered to bring us back after dark into it would be Upper Antelope Canyon, because we were talking about a really cool procedure of like light painting the canyon at night and seeing what it looks like. And so they offered to bring us back, of course, for a price, but they were really awesome, and generally it's not, and I didn't know this at the time, but generally no one ever goes back at night. We didn't know because we hadn't really been there before, but we were offered to be brought in, and we were brought in. And it was the right night. It was a night in August. So we went in, we had our camera equipment, we had spotlights and stuff, and we set up right inside the north end of Upper Antelope Canyon, and had our cameras aiming out, but so we could get the canyon walls, and we were taking some pictures and leaving the shutter open a bit so we could get a longer exposure, and messing with seeing if we could burn some stars into the exposure. And we used the spotlights to real quick shine the walls of the canyon, or the opening, which is a procedure called light painting. And so this helps so that you get that also burn into your image, so you can get the orange walls and then you can get the dark night sky. And we just happened to be there at the right time. It caught my eye, and I told Cameron, I said, look at the stars like right now. And I don't know if it was 8 or 8:30 at night or something like that. It wasn't super late. Maybe it was 10 o'clock. I don't know. But what we were looking out at the canyon at that instant, the Big Dipper was like centered in the sliver of canyon, or looking out of the canyon. You didn't have a whole lot of room. So we took a picture, left the shutter open, light painted the walls, and we probably have the only picture you will ever see of Antelope Canyon and the Big Dipper with the stars burn into the image from, having your shutter open for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes or so. And it was just enough too where the stars were starting to move just a little. I should have left the shutter open a little bit less time. If it was 4 or 5 minutes, it should have been 3 or 4 minutes or so. But still, it's a phenomenal picture. It's one of our favorites. Cameron and I both have our own images of it, and I've never ever heard anyone else ever have this picture or even talk about this. And of course, I don't remember our guides' names, and I would never give it up if I knew who it was, because after the fact, we kind of learned that the Navajo people generally don't like people on the land after dark. And we didn't know that at that point because we were just offered to be taken in and do this cool experience because we just happened to be talking with these guides who were also trying to become photographers. And since my buddy was a very avid photographer, then we got a chance of a lifetime. So that picture is up, and you should be seeing that. I'll have that on while you're, while I've been telling this, so that you can see what we're talking about. But anyhow, that is the ultimate Native American road trip, which is basically northern Arizona or northeastern Arizona. You can let me know if you've been to these spots, and if you plan to go or have any other comments, let us know. Thank you.